Okay, good morning, October 28th, day 4, week 2. Any questions, concerns, technical stuff from last time? Everybody doing okay? Got Anaconda installed at least?
Hey Don, this is Dave.
Hey, Dave.
So I don't know if the Tuesday or last Tuesday anyway, I had to jump out early, and so I missed the last half of that session when you introduced the Python notebook.
Oh, okay.
And so I went back in to watch I downloaded it, and I changed I changed the opening medium to Acrobat Reader, but for some reason that download, it won't open, and it says that it's either not supported or corrupt somehow. So my plan
recording
was to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I can email you the link.
Well, I was gonna back out of it and just try to download it again and see. I don't know why it won't open, but all that to say, I'm still kind of playing catch up, which I planned on finishing that up this weekend to try and catch up to that last session and do all those downloads. But that kind of threw a wrench because it won't open for whatever reason.
Okay. Same here. I'm experiencing the same thing, and I need to catch up as well.
Okay. Was anybody able to successfully, because most everybody was there, was anybody able to successfully open that link?
And I was.
Okay, so it ran like an embedded video in your browser?
Mm-hmm. I think so, yeah.
Well, it's just a YouTube link. Regina and Dave, I'll email.
No. So what I did is I actually went in onto the canvas to the original download. I was following your YouTube, but I had the canvas opened up on another tab.
Mm-hmm.
So I downloaded it from Canvas, the notebook.
Oh.
And then I downloaded it into my Python and then notebook, right? I mean, it downloaded onto my Explorer. But anyway, I had to go, my default setting to open PDFs was Edge. And so I had to change that, followed through to change that to Acrobat Reader. And that went fine, but now that download will not open. It says that it's not supported or it's corrupt.
Are we talking about the Python notebook?
Yes, the download on when that session where you had everybody download it.
Right. That's not a PDF. I'm confused. It's a Python specific IPYNB file that you.
Yeah, when I Okay, well, when I downloaded it, it said, do you want to change your default to open PDFs to Acrobat Reader? And so I was figuring that's what I had to do to get it open. So that's what I did. But even changing it back to Edge, all that to say, it's not supported and I can't get it open. I was thinking if I need to go back and just try again.
I think I'll cover that today. I'm going to go over some more Python today, and I will, because you're trying to double click on it to open it, and like there's an associated application, and it doesn't work that way.
Okay.
There is no associated application. At least I don't know how to associate Jupyter Notebook to IPYNB. I've never tried. I always just open Jupyter Notebook, go to the directory where that file resides and click on it, and Jupyter Notebook brings it up. I never even thought about trying to make it where you could just double click on a Python file or particularly a Jupyter Notebook file. So I'll go through that today.
Well, okay, I'll back up and I'll re-engage from the very beginning over the next couple of days, and I'll let you know if that worked.
Okay.
It's probably something I did. I mean, I have trouble working a calculator sometimes, you know what I mean?
Well, that session too, remember I had internet issues, so that you may or may not see what you need. So Dave, if there's any confusion, because I want to go through if then else statements today and leave you with the first Python exercise to do. And if there's any trouble opening notebooks, we need to resolve it offline maybe this afternoon over the phone or something. So let me know if you're not solid when we're done today.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Cool.
Didn't mean to eat up so much time.
Hey, man, we got a lot of time. Okay, today I wanted to go over basic pivot tables. If you remember from Thursday, we went over the worksheet fundamentals. I think most folks have kind of seen that, if not worked with it, with them. So you've got, columns and rows, and you refer to each row with a letter and a number. And then we have functions that can do mathematical calculations, that can return parts of a string. There's date functions that can tell you what day of the week January 3rd, 1921 was. There's just a whole library, dozens and dozens and dozens of functions that work differently based on the type of data that you're working with, whether it's numeric or a string of just, like name or whatever. So we kind of, and if you need a new column to do calculations, you can insert a column, you can delete columns, just like you would think, all of those sort of normal things. But if you're by chance never ever play with Excel, there's nothing like getting in there and messing with it. So if by the end of, not next week, because I want to go into charts next week, and we'll do the No Kidding Excel intermediate workshop the following week, November, I think 9th and 11th. So by the end of that, if you're not comfortable doing just, basic data cleansing and analysis and basic pivot tables and basic charts, let me know. We'll figure something out. But I think by the time we get there, Excel will be something that you're comfortable enough to do some work with, and we'll do an exercise, a data storytelling analysis exercise with Excel once I get all the way through all this stuff. Okay, so today, I am recording this. Today I wanted to go through chapter 29, and this is something that you could do offline, and I'm sure some of you use pivot tables like no tomorrow. But I wanted to go over it, make sure everybody's up to speed. I'm told by Excel instructors that pivot tables are not an introductory topic. So if by chance this still isn't making sense when we get done this morning, we will hit these, pivot tables again, and to I'm sure a slightly greater extent during the workshop. So not to fear, but I'm just using chapter 29. It's a great outline. And if you care to follow along, remember I've been telling you about all the exercise files. Let me shut down my email so we don't get disturbed, and I'll share my screen. Oh shoot, I need 30 seconds. I apologize. I've been kind of working all morning, and I forgot to check in with my mother. I have to email her back every day, let her know I'm okay. She's 87, lives alone in Florida. Okay, so share screen, back to Zoom, share screen, entire screen. Okay, don't need my camera on right now. Okay, so remember our complete workbook, all of these Excel worksheet workbooks, and some are macro files, which is kind of like a programming language if you haven't used it. But all of these workbooks, we're going to be looking at bank accounts. If you want to follow along, or you can just watch and then play with it later. And again, everything I'm covering pretty much is in chapter 29. I'll be bouncing back and forth between the Excel 2019 Bible and Excel itself, though this particular file, bank accounts. It's a great exercise file for working with pivot tables. Okay, so you bring that up in Excel, and there's the actual data that we'll be looking at. It's a month's worth of accounts opened at a bank, and which department opened them, how much was initially deposited, and whether it's a new or existing customer, an existing customer opening up a new account, those sort of things, just notional data. And they went ahead and plugged in the day of the week for us so that we can goof around with that. So yeah, pivot tables, chapter 29. So I want to make sure, I've had a couple of students that I think we're not rock solid on the kind of data or the structure of the data in the worksheet that tends to a pivot table. So that's one of the big things I want to make sure is really solid. Okay, so about pivot tables. So what they do is summarize data, and then they'd let you, you'll see this here in a minute, they let you organize either in columns, or you can take the exact same data and turn it into rows, like you are rotating or pivoting the data. But the main thing is that it automatically groups and summarizes and subtotals repeating elements, like in our data set here, where we have multiple occurrences of this, the type of account is savings, and multiple occurrences of the type of account that is certificate of deposit, CD. But then you've got this unique value next to it, all these amounts that you could do a formula to summarize this stuff, but Excel makes it so easy that it's just a really cool tool that you have to know about. So that's what it is, and it's highly interactive. It's interesting to me, going back and forth between a coding language like Python, where it doesn't do anything unless you run it, and you've got to get the commands right, and then you get these the typical Windows tool, which is a graphical user interface, and you're clicking on things, and it just happens as you build it, as you click. Works great. So I want to make sure I cover this. Yeah, this drawback here, it doesn't automatically update if you change the source data. Now, I don't normally do that. I kind of create a data set for goofing around, and then I do the pivot table on it. But there's a refresh button, or if you do mess with your original data that the pivot table is based on, you got to refresh your data. Okay, I'm going through here to make sure I don't get ahead of myself or skip anything important. Yeah, and Excel 97, I started using them in 02 or 03, working with Air Force deployment data. Who was ready to go to Iraq, who was and Afghanistan, what units were ready, what units were not, who had just been, who was on tap to go, all of that stuff from a whole bunch of different Air Force readiness and deployment databases, sorts and DCAPES. And anyway, you Air Force guys probably recognize those names. Okay, an example pivot table. Here's our data. Like the book is pointing you back to the same. There's our source data. This is in Excel. Bang, that's back in the book. So we're going to use this as our source data. Okay, yeah, like I said, it's a month of new accounts, the amount that they deposited when they opened the account, which type of account, IRA, checking, CD, or savings, opened by a teller or the new accounts department. And there are, I think, 4 branches within the bank. So which branch opened it up, and whether or not it was an existing or new customer. So that's your basic tabular data. I think we mentioned this later, but it's actually in a table. You'll notice these drop downs at the top. That's kind of a giveaway that this has already been changed from a basic workbook to it's called just a table, insert table. But I think we'll get to that. Okay. There's the data. And if you ever, like I said, if you haven't downloaded the whole thing, if you go to this URL, this wiley.com/go Excel 2019 Bible, it's organized by chapters of the book. And I found at least one file for the analysis tool pack that we talked about on Thursday that I showed you a little bit about. That example file from the chapter in this book is not in the zip file. So you actually have to go out to the website, and the files are organized by chapter. You'll find it out there. If you're missing one in the zip file, that's what happened. I just found that out over the weekend or yesterday. Okay. A lot of information that can answer questions. And I wanted to kind of point these out. These are like business questions, right? And a pivot table can take all of that. Could be, this is pretty easy with 700 rows. You can start to look at it, and you could almost do it on the back of a napkin, but pivot table will crunch all that down. And if you're dealing with, thousands of rows, there's really no other way to do it. I mean, you can do everything a pivot table can do using formulas. Same with the analysis tool pack. You can write pretty complex looking formulas to do the same statistical analysis that the analysis tool pack can do, but they've made these shortcuts and they work so well that everybody uses them. So these are the questions that the pivot tables we'll look at today answer. How much money was it used to open in accounts, and you can even like look at which type of account, subtotal for types of accounts. Okay. You can, of course, spend time sorting the data and creating formulas, but why would you ever do that? Okay. What now? Figure 29.2. I want to jump over to Excel, and these tabs along the bottom correspond directly to the figures in the book, and you'll see how that works out. The book can sometimes stick a figure within the text, and it doesn't quite seem. It seems like it should be a paragraph or two later. So just be aware of that. Okay, so yeah, the first pivot table is grabbing the branch on the left and the type of account across the top, and then summarizing summing how many certificates of deposit accounts, CD accounts, were created at the central branch. How many? This is how much money, not how many. How much was in the combined initial deposit for CDs, and then for checking, then for IRA, and for savings across. So you are creating a matrix basically of those two things, and then you're summing another field. In this case, it's the amount of the deposit. So that's a basic pivot table, and it automatically puts in a grand total column that is the sum of these 4 columns. Okay. And I'll do one manually here while we're in this session, so you see how you can it's just magic. You just drag and drop, and there's a few nuances that are, unless you go through something methodically, it's easy to miss. And then the next one is adding a filter, so that up here we can drop that down and we can pick existing, new, or all. And I'll show you how to add that. So that way you're if you're producing this for someone to use, they can filter the data. Or if you want to filter the data as an analyst, you can add that so that you can further narrow down the data. And I'll show you how to do that too. And the next one shows the amount of new deposits broken by branch and account type. Yeah, we did that. There's the one with the filter object, filter item. Oh, and also they we were talking. I said a pivot table lets you rotate the data. You can see we got branches now are across the top, and in the previous one, branches were rows, and then in the next sheet, branches are columns. Well, that is as easy as dragging 2 items around, dragging 2 columns around on your pivot table. It's just magic, and we'll do that. Okay. So that's what apparently that's what they mean by pivoting. Like these 2 pivot tables show the pivot, where you pivoted the rows over to columns and the columns over to the rows. There you go. I guess I don't know what else you would call a pivot table, but I think everybody's more or less gone with that terminology. That's a long time ago. I mean, for all I know, pivot tables are something from the 1800s, and they just used to do them manually. Why pivot? There you go. Rotate or revolve. Okay. Boy, I tell you, teaching on Zoom is lonely business. Absolutely silent. Dark, silent, quiet. Everybody doing okay?
We're just so enthralled.
Get to the point, Walker. Get to the point.
Yeah, if it would help, I could put one of those thunderstorm and lightning audio tracks on.
I could probably share audio. In fact, I've got here we go. Guys, we're going to be together for months and hours, so you might have noticed I'm not exactly 100% laser focused on work all the time. This is a USB audio interface that lets you plug a microphone and a guitar into your computer so that you can do like multi-track recording, with software on your computer. It's fantastic. And so I'll goof around with that and these, but it works really well like as a podcast interface, where you put an actual audio microphone in front of you, and then I can play guitar, and it comes through either recording on Zoom or comes through a Zoom call. It comes through like really good audio. I mean, without any EQ or processing or anything, works really well. So if you get sick of Excel, just let me know and I'll play some guitar. Just kidding. Not on the record anyway. Okay, now, here we go. I'm a database guy at heart. You know how your first love. My first job when I got off the flight line, I was a radar troop working on C-130Es. and I got tired of working outside and dragging a toolbox and working shifts and all that. So I cross-trained in computer programming in 1988 as an E4, as a buck sergeant. And my first shop out of tech school at Keesler Air Force Base, Mississippi, was an Oracle database shop that was using Oracle to do just kind of management information systems stuff. You couldn't buy anything off the shelf back then. I mean, in 88, almost no one was on a PC. So this was on a VAX mini computer, which is kind of like a mainframe, the old green or orange character terminals. But it was, nothing has changed to me in the way data is laid out in relational database theory. If it has changed, I don't know what has changed, because all the stuff I'm teaching and all the lessons and tutorials I take and everything all have the same layout as relational data did 33 years ago. Good night. So anyway, that's my background is really as a database developer, as a programmer. That's the most hands-on experience I had. And then I finished a degree, and at the 12-year mark, when I was 30, I went to officer training school, and they don't let officers play. You can't do anything technical. It seems like they want you to be a leader, manager, supervisor, and off I went, and the whole internet happened. I got commissioned in 94, and the internet happened, and object-oriented programming happened, and I'm like, watching it, if I'd stayed, if I'd only stayed on the keyboard. So anyway, data, that's why you hear me harping so much about data. It's really always been at the core of just my mindset. So data appropriate for a pivot table. This is something that I mentioned when I showed the worksheet, but I want to make sure it's rock solid. Not every worksheet you see is pivot table ready. And I'm not just talking about like the Arkansas crime data that I showed that had, headers and footnotes down in the footer and that sort of stuff that need to be cleaned up into a, no kidding, column headers data, that needed to be wrangled, cleansed. There's the way the data is laid out needs to be correct, or the algorithms, the software won't know what to do. Sometimes it'll just error, and other times it'll just give you just really weird results that you don't quite understand. One great example that I can think of is in the exercise that I used last time, and I think I'll repeat it or something like it. It was analyzing an attribute of each of the 50 United States. So you had a state column that was which state we're talking about, and then you had, population, square mileage, and GDP, any number of things. You could have, a categorical variable as to whether it's landlocked or, whether it's a right to work state, whether it was one of the original 13 colonies, whatever you want. But it was 50 rows, and data like that isn't pivot table ready. It just doesn't work, because there's nothing repeating that can be, squozen in and summarized and added up like the way we looked at account type versus branch and the amount of dollars total in each of the intersections in that matrix. So not all data is ready for a pivot table. It needs to be like this bank accounts data where it repeats. And when we go in now, this book will call that data normalized. We'll be using that term in the future when we go over SQL and relational database design. And I'll just go with it here. But looking at that bank accounts table, I'm not sure I would call it third normal form normalized, and we'll get to that later. So don't worry about me. But that's the kind of data that you would use in a pivot table. And the more you just like, practice, the more you goof around with these things, the more you'll understand what is pivotable and what is not. Pivotable, what's pivot table ready data and what's not. Okay, so and that's where they're talking about, pulling data out of a database is ready to go. But there's a whole other section in this book that talks about pivoting normalized data, and it treats it separately from this. So anyway, I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself, so I'm going to hush. Okay, so just be aware of that. Not all data is made for pivoting, and they use, this is not in our worksheet, it's just something they show. This data is not appropriate for a pivot table. It's got these goofy subtotals in it. It's already a pivot table. So you wouldn't pivot table pivot table data. So you need to, know what you're looking at. But you can look at this and probably see what it might look like before I even turn the page here. You've got a state and you've got a month. Well, that's all you've got here, and then some sort of amount of something. This QTR-1 column E, is obviously a summary of January, February, and March. And then you've got West total, East total. Those are obviously subtotals. So yeah, anytime you've got anything, formatting like this or summary data or whatever in your worksheet, you don't want that. You want the raw, repeating, normalized data. And the next figure shows what that looks like. Oh, they've gone ahead and grouped month as quarter. And this is, like I said, this is not in our workbook, our worksheet. This is just in the book showing you, like I said, if you play with these things enough, you'll get it no problem. What looks right. But then there we go. There's our pivot table created from that data. We've got row data for each state, and then column data for each month grouped by quarter. And you can group stuff however you might like. In fact, I wanna hang on a sec. Yep, they've got the region already there for you in the state. So that's how you're able to group states by their region, because it's in the data. It's in the data sheet. Oh, okay. Well, there it is. It's in a different workbook. Normalized data has got that California state data, if you want to go play with that. So there's a couple of ways to create a pivot table. You can go into Excel, and here we are, boom, in the raw data. You can insert a recommended pivot table. So you go up to insert, click on recommended, and it looks at your data and will recommend, usually, in my experience, it's just the most simple pivot tables that are a couple of the columns. like two of the columns at a time, and it looks for a numeric field by default to summarize, to be the intersection data, and then it throws them out there for you to click on. So depending on which one of these you want, and it uses the actual data for this thumbnail, so that's pretty slick. So if that's what you need, bam, it's really quick like that. But they're very simple. So you can start with one of these as your baseline, and then start, dragging items around. Or you can, once you get comfortable enough, you start with a blank, and you put the columns that you want, or you put the items where you want. It's only 4 areas to decide what you want to do with. Any of you power users, do you ever use recommended pivot tables, or do you just start with a blank and you know what you want, so you start with a blank? Can I pick on you?
I've used recommended pivot charts. No, but yeah. Not.
There you go. And a pivot chart, we'll draw a few of those next week. A pivot chart is a chart based on pivot table data. And yeah, they get, to me, designing a chart from scratch is a little less understandable, a little less intuitive than designing a pivot table from a blank pivot table. Just the way my brain works. And again, I am not a daily Excel user by any means. Okay, back on track here. I need this book to keep me from, I'll be all over the map if I don't keep to an outline. So those are recommended pivot tables. It like I said, it looks at your columns and goes, oh, these two look like they're related, and oh, here's a numeric column. How's this look to you? And it guesses what you might like. And they're sometimes magic. And we do note that you don't have to use a worksheet to do a pivot table. You can connect to a database. Don't know that we'll get there in this course. But the real cool thing is creating a pivot table manually. And there's just, once you kind of understand, or when I did, I kind of had an aha. Oh yeah, I had used pivot tables, and there were 3 or 4 things that I just never really dug into a book. I used them. I learned them by looking at somebody using them and looking at them, using them, not creating them. And so when I just settled down and took a little time, they're pretty cool, pretty easy. So the way to create one manually is to click anywhere in the worksheet. And like I said, this is in the form of a table. We didn't talk about that, but you see how this, it's grayed out right now. When I go to insert table, it's already grayed out because we've already done that. It's just one mouse click. And all it does is restructure the data for Excel so that it knows it's one cluster of data. Because if you have like blank lines and other, you can create more than one table on a worksheet. And if you click within that table and insert a pivot table, it will only use the data in the table, the one table you're working on. But we only have one table in this worksheet. So all we got to do is click anywhere in it and say, let's go back home, see, over to insert pivot table. And it automatically guesses that you want, see, table 1. It's not using a column and row and reference. It knows that all this data is in a table. So it's going to guess that's the one you want to use, right? That's the one you clicked in, right, Walker? And I say, Yes, Excel. That's the one I want to use. And I always put a new pivot table in a new worksheet. You can put them in an existing worksheet if that's the way you like to work. I always do it in a new one. And then you say, okay, pow. And then you get this blank canvas. And that's where if you don't kind of play with these and use them and read the tech data, you may not know kind of how they work. So that's what I want to make sure I go over, which I will do immediately following our next commercial break. When we come back next hour on Data Analysis with Don, we'll actually create a pivot table manually. Any questions?
A small podcast.
On Data with Don. Any questions? Everybody okay? You able to get to the day? Are you following along in Excel, or you just okay, cool? Because that's the best way to do it, is to actually do it. And if you goof it up and it gets irrecoverable, close it out and start over again. But yeah, we'll drag some stuff around here, and I'll show you how that works when we come back from break at 9:30 cell phone time. I even got a guitar on my screen. Look at that, my screen. I'm wannabe. I'm really not that good. I mean, I'm okay, but I'm not very good. All right, guys, I'll see you at 9:30.
What?
Okay. Sorry, I'm a minute late. I got a buddy in the hospital with COVID. Tomorrow makes 3 weeks. So I might have mentioned that. Back in the ICU, back on the ventilator, and not doing well. And there you go. Okay. So last time on Survivor, I did insert pivot table in a new sheet. And of course, Excel defaults to the meaningful sheet 1. If you don't have a sheet 1 already. If you do, it calls it sheet 2. So we have this thing that says pivot table 2, and it's blank. And then a blank screen. What do I do now? But what happened was I clicked outside of the pivot table, which is yet to be formed, and that went away. This pivot table fields thing goes away. If you accidentally close it out or click off of the pivot table, it'll disappear. And you wonder if you did something wrong, but you didn't. Just click inside the pivot table again. Uh-oh. Just click inside the pivot table again. Show field list. There it is. Okay. So there you go. Even if you exit out, show pivot table fields, we'll bring it back. So you've really got 4 areas of I did click, yes, I am recording. You got really 4 areas to deal with here. And then, of course, a bunch of combinations of, formatting and grouping and stuff that you could do. But just for example, let's recreate this one, this branches and account types. So to do that, we had what branches were. Each branch was a row. So that's where you see this rows box down here, ROWS. If you know you want to see a row for each whatever, drag that down into the rows box. And we wanted a row for every branch. So without telling it anything else, you can kind of look at that and go, yep, that's what I wanted. I wanted a row for the central branch stuff, and a row for the North County branch, and a row for West Side. I think I mistakenly said there were 4 branches, and there are not. There are only 3. So the next thing you want is okay. So I know I want branches, and I'm looking at the accounts. So I know I want an account, each account type going across the top. So I want a column for each account type. So that's easy enough. Just drag that down to columns. So there you go. I got 4 account types. I got CDs, checking, IRA, and savings. So you kind of know you got the layout when you do that. But then what is it you want in the guts? What are you summarizing when it comes to the branches and the account types? There could be theoretically more things out there that relate to those two, more numeric fields, more numeric attributes that you might want to subtotal summarize by those two types. So you have to decide. In our case, nice and simple, it's the amount of that initial deposit into that new account. So we drag that down to values, and now wait a minute, that's not the amount. The amount was thousands of dollars. What in the world have I got here? So inside of values, there are multiple ways to summarize the data. By default, this defaulted the number, the count of new CDs at the central branch. Say there were 97 accounts created, but that's not what the boss asked for, right? We're trying to replicate. We're trying to replicate. No. Come on. Down. Chapter up there it is, chapter 29. We're trying to replicate. Where'd it go? Say somebody drew this out for you and said, I want it to look like this. Well, those are obviously a sum of the amount, not a count of the number of amounts for the intersection in that matrix there. So all you have to do is come down here and click on value field settings. That was somewhat of a aha for me with pivot tables, because it will default to something that you weren't expecting, and unless you're tenacious, you give up like I did or didn't know it or whatever. So value field settings is where you would this is the value field, right? This lower right corner of the pivot table design view. That's the value field. So value field settings let you adjust what it is you're doing with amount. And we want to sum the amounts. We don't want to count them, or you might want to count them. You might just want to know how many CD accounts I created at Central. Well, this is where you adjust that. What is it you want in that pivot table? And let's so if I sum it, that's where you start to see the thousands of dollars instead of the number of accounts created. But let's do another one. I think you can, if you right click in there. Yeah, if you right click inside of the pivot table, you get a shortcut menu here, and you can pick it. You don't have to go down to the value field, but that's what that thing is, value field settings. Maybe you wanted the average of the dollar amounts in that account. You can click on that and get a different amount. You get a different one. So there are, in this value field settings, you'll notice there's a bunch of stuff. What is the minimum that anybody used to open an account? You may want to know, because you lose money if you open an account with less than whatever, maybe, I don't know. Bam, there's the minimum savings account at the Central was 200. The minimum savings account in North County was 250, and so on. So yeah, right click value field settings, and that lets you, and you can even do like standard deviation. You can even do the var and the varp. I think var is variance, but I don't know what the varp is. Hunter, you're our mathematician, right? Do you know what a varp is?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Me neither. Okay. One of my favorite Brad Paisley songs. Me neither. Okay, so any questions on that? Everybody, this is the most basic pivot table. Just like if you click recommended pivot tables, this is one of the ones that came up, and just showing you the manual process. Everybody fully on board with that?
Sorry, I just want to mention, I want to answer your question. It calculates the variance of an entire population.
There you go. Thank you, Paul. A quick Google away. Or did you already know that?
I already knew it. I took my statistics last fall.
Oh, good for you, man. I don't know. I would need to take something that I don't use every other year to keep it in my head. Yeah, use it or lose it for me anyway. So good deal. Thanks, Paul. Which is different than the variance of a sample. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yes, there's a difference between sample and population.
Yeah. And the closer the two get, the more confident you are in your sample. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah. There you go. Okay, so that's the first go round at an initial, and then the next one was adding a filter, right? Remember we wanted to filter by let's go back to the book. Was it customer type? Yeah. So that's pretty easy to do. You just if you know you want to add a filter or more than one filter, you drag that down to the filters, and it automatically pops it into your pivot table and bam, updates it right there. So maybe we only want to know what new customers deposited because that's what we want. So new customers, existing customers, and it updates automatically, bam. And then we're still on min max for value field settings. We're on min. We want sum. Okay. So yeah, that's what the filter thing does. But so let's go back to all. So now it's as if we didn't have a filter. But we could filter by. You may not want to look at it, but you might want to filter it. It might be cluttering to put all the filters as columns or rows in the pivot table. So maybe you just want to look at the amount of stuff on Monday. Let's drag that down to filters. So maybe we only want to look at dollar amounts on Monday. And our grand total is what? 1,381,000. Well, what about Friday? What is Friday a better day for the bank? 1,718,000. Woohoo! Payday. People are opening new accounts and depositing more money. But I got to wonder if this is realistic data. Saturday, everybody stays home, and they close at 1. Yeah, 153,000. So that's relatively accurate notional data, I would say. Cool. So that's how you and to get rid of anything that you have put down here. Say, it wasn't weekday, I didn't want that. You put that up, you drag it away. If you know you're never going to need it, you drag it away. Now, if what did we have? Data weekday. If I put that down here and I decide I just want to not look at it, but I like the fact that it was there, I don't want to change my pivot table. You can unclick on the checkbox, and it goes away. But if you recheck it, I think it comes back where you had it. Nope. I guess I read that part wrong. Anyway, that's how you get rid of something, is dragging it back into the fields. and you can get rid of your filter like that. Okay. And then manually create a pivot table manually. Stay on track, Walker. Stay on script. Talk about what? Talk about automatic. Okay. We talked about specifying the data. Yeah, here, there's a tip here. It's a good idea to create a table for the range, which you can do by clicking on insert table, and it automatically assumes if you've got a one neat sheet of data, it automatically assumes that. But you can create a table for a given range or a different number of columns in the worksheet. And the nice thing is it's automatic. If you add information to the existing data in a table that is the basis of your pivot table, the pivot table will automatically update. Okay. Laying out the pivot table. We did that. Drag the amount field. We did. The account type into the rows. We did that. We did that. We did that. We drug. Is that the past tense of drag or dragged? We drug the branch field into the columns area. We did that. Oh, here's another. You see how this does not look like money, right? We might like it to look like money. I know in the pivot table, this thought occurred to me on the break. If you go into the pivot table and click and right click in the values area and say number format, you can pick like a currency. Since we're doing dollars, we'll pick currency, and comes out nice like that. And we say okay, and bam, all of a sudden now we're looking at what looks like money. So it's just a formatting issue. Same data, just a formatting issue. But I wanted to undo that. So if I go back to number format and say general, that's where we were. Yeah, goes back to just numbers. But I wanted to see what happened if I go back to the source data and I format this column. Format cells, right? I'm going off script here. And I format that column as currency. Blam. Now, will it update? Where's my refresh button? Refresh. No, it does not bring that formatting over to the pivot table. There you go. That was just a thought that occurred to me. I don't think it necessarily covered that in the book. Okay, moving on. Number format. Yeah, so you can get the pivot table to display in different formats. After a few simple steps, we got to this pivot table just by dragging and dropping, click and drag. And then this, so that this book and the Excel help on Microsoft Documents and everything makes sense to you, it's good to use this this lingo so that you get the terms right, so that when you see it in the help, you're using the right terminology. Like item, an item, a row or column header. So account type is an item. Customer is an item. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Nope. Existing and new. Let me think about this for a second. Existing and new are items for the customer field, but the customer field is not an item. It's a column or row label, depending on where you have it. That's why I keep using the word attribute or column, because we know what we're talking about. It's a like account type is an attribute of that transaction. But anyway, there you go. And there's a couple more on the next page. Yeah, the source data. Yep. The actual sheet that you used or table that you used to create the pivot table. And we did a filter and the values area. We did that. And we did sum and min and count and whatnot. Yeah, here's a new feature. I've never had to use this. Any of you regular folks, power users, ever use a layout? Change to the default layout?
Can't say I have.
Can't say you have. Okay, me neither. Me neither. Formatting. Yeah, by default, it uses general number formatting. To change it, we right click and then choose what you want. Choose the option for the formatting that you want. Oh, and there's there's some formatting. Like I say, I don't generally ever worry too much about prettiness, but when you are working with a pivot table, there's two new options up here on the menu. They're not the ribbon, the tabs. There's pivot table analyze and pivot table design, and you can start to pick like these layouts, like you can a template in PowerPoint or anything like that. And then there's options here for banded rows and banded columns, and if that helps with readability. So, like I said, if you're publishing this thing, these formatting options are very likely to be something that you would use. And I want to make sure I don't get ahead of myself. I know we can change the subtable from there too, or subtotal from there too. There you go. Like, so we can, choose or choose to display or not these grand totals and subtotals if you do group things in the values field there. Let's see. Yeah, grand totals off. You can turn it off at the end or only for rows or only for columns. Let's turn it off for both and just bam, just goes away. But then if you want it to come back, on for rows and columns. There you go. Embargo on. And then subtotals, I don't think we got there yet. If you can have more than one thing in the values field, I think we'll get to there before we're done at the end of the chapter. Yeah, here's where I was getting back. It will frequently default to sum, but sometimes you want the count, sometimes you want min, max, average, whatever, and you remember that value field settings. That's that. Until you use it a few times, it's you can't remember. I have trouble remembering where that setting is. And then show values as is pretty cool. I want to make sure I don't get ahead of myself, but I might get ahead of myself. Show values as. That's when you right click and you go to value field settings. You can show values as like a percentage or that kind of thing, as a percentage of grand total. So maybe you just want to know that 20% of the money coming in at the central branch is because of an initial opening of a CD account. So what we, by default, we were looking at value field settings, show values as, no calc, nothing. It's the summary. It's the matrix math of whatever the sum or the count or whatever. Turn that back to no calculation, say okay. But now say, for example, going off script here. What if we had count? We were right click and we had value field settings and we were counting the number of accounts at each branch by type. And then we wanted to, I probably could have done this at the same time. Value field settings. Now I want to know the percentage of the types of new accounts. Show values as percentage of grand total. Same thing. It just tells you that, 13.6% of our new accounts in the central branch were CDs. So yeah, that value field settings thing is how you completely change out the how you modify, how you design the guts of your pivot table. Oop, go back to amount. Value field settings. Sum of amount. Back where we were. Okay. Now, after you create it, you can always modify it. Yeah, and this next one, say we want account type and what type of employee opened it, and then the branch is going across the top, and that's just a matter of dragging and dropping. So we wanted, we didn't want branch anymore. We wanted, was it account type? Account type and open by. Those go in the rows now, account type and open by. And then, oh yeah, branch in your column. See, right now we don't have any, it's just those things. There are no columns. It's just the row data and the sum, the grand total. So you don't even get the same kind of, you don't get a grand total if you only use the rows. But we wanted to know a column for each branch. Branch, a column. There it is, column for each branch. Bam. So here we get, now we know that new accounts, and did they change it to, they did not. We're still doing the sum of the amount, the dollar amount in total deposited. But I wanted to show you, if you have, for whatever reason, more than one item, more than one column, like down here in your rows, you can drag it around and switch them around, and now it groups differently. Now it groups by opened by, which is either new accounts or teller. It's opened by like a customer service representative, where you go and you sit down at the desk, or you can do the same thing standing up at the teller line. It matters with the order of these fields down here in your design block, your rows field, your filters field. They will display and summarize and everything in that order according to how you have them down there. So that's important, and you can just drag it around. Now, if you want to know again, account type summarized by the type of employee, you just drag it around. And that's all day long. You modify stuff like that. I'm curious, if I hit Control Z, I'm going to go off script here. Yep. If you hit Control Z, it backs out of what you just did, just like any other Windows program. Okay. So that's modifying it after the fact, which we've kind of already been doing. Going from sum to count to min to max and all that. Some tips on PowerPoint modifications. Yeah, drag it away. If an area is more than one field, yep, the order matters. Now, here's what I tried to do earlier. To remove a field temporarily from the pivot table, remove the check mark from the field name if the pivot table is redisplayed without the field. and it appears in its previous section. Okay, to remove the field temporarily, remove the check mark. Let's do that. So temporarily, I want to remove opened by, and it goes away. And then that says, place the check mark back in the field name, and it appears in its previous section. I thought I did that. Did I do something wrong? Opened by. Bam. I must have done it in the wrong order because it did it just like the book said. So there you go. If you add a field to the filter section, drop down list, yep, which allows you to filter the displayed data. We did that. Okay. I think we're going to do a little grouping here. Oh, yeah. If you want to use the pivot table somewhere else, paste just the values and you get literally just the stuff in the pivot table. Otherwise, if you want to keep the formats and everything, you have to use Office Clipboard to paste it. Home, clipboard, and group everything together so it comes over as a group of objects. And there you go. I don't know that I've done that. I think I just leave it where it's at normally. Okay. More pivot table examples. Yeah, we got all of these down here. Which day of the week accounts for the most deposits? I didn't look, so I'm not cheating. Which day of the week has the most deposits? So we would want to count and day of the week. So we could choose, let's see, I'm gonna try this. Off script. Being brave here. Being brave. Okay, so if I wanted to know, what did it say? Which day of the week accounts for the most deposits, not the most money, just the most number of deposits. So I think I could just do weekday as a row. And again, I would want amount, but I would want it to default to count. There we go. So it appears, yeah, like we said, even with the amounts, that kind of correlates. Friday, payday, everybody comes in and says, I want a new savings account, and I'm going to put all this money in it. I'm going to leave it there, and it's going to accrue interest. And then they're back on Monday pulling it out. So Friday's your big day. Let's see if I did what they said to do. Which day of the week accounts for the most deposits? What 2914. See, sometimes they're out of order. You see, this is looking at amount. That's not answering the question, book. Not to be critical. This sum of amount is something I got to look into. This bar graph in here, it's a conditional formatting, which I'm not. I know a teeny tiny bit about, but it's in chapter 17. If that looks really cool, and that's like, oh, that's what I need to do in a pivot table. Chapter 17 of the book is the way to do that. But that's not what that is. That does not show new account totals. That shows deposited money. Somebody come off the microphone and tell me I'm not crazy. Come on, I got all morning.
You're not crazy.
Who was that?
Oh.
Paul, you're always the one that comes off the microphone and helps me out. Some of you other guys, are y'all listening to me or are you just working? Hampton?
We're here.
Are you on board?
You're
You're on?
Did you say something?
You with me?
Yes, I'm on here. I'm in
All
the
I
office
hear is
today.
walk, 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 walk. Yeah, Don, the whole office is listening to you. You're our favorite comedian. All right. So yeah, that's not right. That is a typo or so there you go. I'll go back to my software engineering requirements background. That ain't what they asked for. I did the right pivot table, not the author of this book. Okay, here we go. Yeah, chapter 17. I need to look into that because that is kind of cool looking to give a relative graphic within a pivot table. And then there's some of these examples. If you're going through here, you'll see like a PCT column that's a calculated field. And I ran out of time to go look at how much that. How many accounts? I'm not going to look. How many accounts? How many? So that's a count. That's not how much. That's how many. How many accounts were opened at each branch, broken down by account type? I'm going to say how many were broken down at each branch. So I'm gonna get rid of weekday because we don't care anymore. But I'm gonna say branch on the row. See what we get there. What did we say? How many broken down by account type? Oh, so I am going to want a account type as a column. I could do it either way, right? So there we go. How many CDs were opened at the central? That's back to our original thing. 2915. Woohoo! Okay. I'm sorry, was that loud? I get excited when I get it right. Okay, how much money was used? That's easy enough. How much money was used to open the accounts? Remember, now we're saying how many, and then we go from how many to how much. Right click in there, value field settings, and we change it from count to sum. Oh, bang. How much money was used to open the accounts? Oh, but we're grouping. This is we wanted to see this into each value range. Yeah, there's one in here. Let's see. Part 1, 2, 1. That's by date. Here we go. This is grouping the count. If I click in here, we can right click and go to the group dialog box, and you'll see that we're grouping at one ending at 90,000 by 10,000. So if you want to group the data, maybe more or less, you pick the size of the bins like we were talking about in histograms. So let's say 5,000 instead of 10,000. That should, one too many zeros, two too many zeros. That should double doubles the number of bins. So that's how we're grouping. And this percentage thing is a calculated field. So this sheet immediately got more than I could handle just by looking at chapter 30. Apologies. I'll have to get smarter on that. But then maybe we'll handle it in the I'm trying not to get too far ahead of our workshop week after next. Okay. So yeah, I think we're what type of accounts do tellers open most often? That would normally dictate a filter, I would think. Yeah, open by teller. That's easy enough. Just if you only want to know part of the data, that's going to be a filter. Otherwise, if you don't filter it, it uses all the data in whatever column and whatever row you're using. And you can use multiple filters, and you can have multiple things down in your value field. Learning more. Go to the next chapter. but that's what I wanted to cover with this one. Okay, I did want to go. I got a Python notebook I want to cover. Any other than wanting some time to goof around with this stuff? Any questions, or I may not know the answer because I'm pretty much showing you everything I know because I don't use these to. Any questions or additions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
On Q2, how do you get the sum of amount to show up in the graph? How it is?
On Q, let me go back to that. On Q2, how do you?
How can you show your numbers in that format?
Oh.
With how it has, the bars where it's measuring.
Oh, how do you make the bars happen?
Yeah.
I wish I knew, Hampton. That's what I was talking about. That's chapter 17, conditional formatting.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have time to go into it
Okay.
prior to looking at it, but I will, so that it makes sense to me, because that's cool looking.
Yeah, that's nice. That'd be cool to use.
It's in chapter 17 of this book. If you get there before I do. But
okay,
I wanted to do charting next week, so that's absolutely something I need to look into. I don't know what other stuff you can do like that. I do know there's another sheet in here that they didn't really explain how they did it. I'm trying to find it. Yeah, in this Q4, in tab Q4, PCT is like a named formula or something that you pull up.
Mm-hmm.
PCT isn't one of our columns, so I'd need to look into that one a little bit more too.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Where were we with that bar? I want to see if I do number format, if it doesn't mess that up. Currency. Yeah, just makes it look nice. But no, that's this conditional formatting is adding a bar, because this is all in column B, right? The bars and the amount are in column B. So it just adds a relative, the relative size bar.
I think I see actually under conditional formatting, the data bars. If you go up to the top banner in conditional formatting, and then
there we go. And just add data bars.
Look
at that. Yeah. There you go. Easy enough.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Let's try that for something else. I've never messed with that. Let's something that looks kind of simple here. Is that going to work? Conditional formatting, data bars. What's that going to do? Solid fill. I don't think so. There's got to be there has to be a use case. You know what I mean? A particular type of pivot table where those make sense. So I'll have to get, but that's how that happened there. And if we conditional formatting and we turn that off, data bars, none. It's kind of starting to show you. Looks like you got to highlight the whole chart. It'll do a data bar just for one column. And it's also a very simple pivot table. It's only rows, no columns. Yeah, I'll goof around with that and we can learn together. Okay. Good question. Good segue. Conditional formatting and data bars. That's cool. I'll have to look into that. All right, I'm going to close this out and close out the book. It's just about time for another break, and then we'll go one more session. I want to talk about if, then, else, and Boolean logic, and then leave you with some time to do a programming exercise, actually do some programming. So, see everybody back. Let's go 10:25, okay? back at 10:25. And we're back. Jim, you have a question? You're off of mute.
No, I'm just trying to pull my this Boolean logic Python from downloads. I keep forgetting the sequence I have to do to all the machinations to get it to work.
Machination.
Yes.
Yep. So that once that O3 decisions and Boolean logic is in your notebooks directory, that was Dave. We were talking about trying to double click on an IPYNB file, right?
Well, I didn't double click on it. All I did is click the link, and I'm getting the same message, and it's telling me that it can't open because it is either not a supported file type or because the file has been damaged. For example, it was sent as an email attachment, wasn't correctly decoded.
I don't think you have to double click the file. You have to go into your Anaconda and then click on Jupyter Notebook, and then in the browser, that's where you open the file from.
Yeah, I'm not double clicking anything. I am going to modules on the canvas where it says download this file, and that's all I'm clicking on.
Oh.
Okay, just a sec, Dave. Let me bring up my Gmail, and I'm going to email you the file as an attachment.
Okay.
Dave Smith file for today, and then attach as an actual attachment, not a drive attachment. Python notebooks 03 decisions and Boolean logic .ipynb. So it's coming into your email. So assuming it doesn't filter attachments or whatever, if it comes through, okay.
Okay, I'll keep an eye out for it.
Okay, and I'm trying to think if I'm here, I'm in the classroom. Let me. Am I sharing my screen? I'm not.
No.
Share screen. Share the whole screen. Nothing but the screen. So I'm in the classroom. If I click on the three dots. No, that's editorial mode. So if I click on the file itself and then click on it's being processed, please try again later.
Yeah, all of mine say that. All of the downloads that you have for even the first one, I want to say, but the Excel Bible, I think it said that too, but it downloaded. I have no problem with that. I have it open.
Well, I just clicked on it, and it is. Let me go to my downloads. Don Walker downloads. Kind of need to get to, and there's decisions in Boolean logic.ipynb in my downloads.
Yep. And I have the same thing. I have these folders on like my C drive or something, but it downloaded. But when I try to open it,
yeah, you can't open
it.
Yeah,
that's let me keep going.
Got it.
Let me keep going. Hang on. So now you go to Anaconda, Jupyter Notebook, Anaconda, and open up Jupyter Notebook. So you got your Explorer tab now, right? You got something that looks like where'd it go?
Well, let me get back into all that because I got frustrated and got out of it.
Okay. There's my YouTube channel. Okay, so from scratch, when I open Jupyter Notebooks, I get my default Windows Explorer view. and that Python takes a second or two to come up. So let me know when you're at this point, Dave.
Sorry, I was on the wrong screen. Yeah, I have that. I'm on the home page.
Okay. So like for instance, I just downloaded it. So these are my actual downloads. If I click on that, and then sort by last modified, this Explorer window is not as good as Windows Explorer. 03 should be. Well, this is not my downloads directory, I don't think. But that's not where I normally put them. So I'm way off script here.
and I might have either during that first day or second day, whenever we did this, I might have either misunderstood or you covered some more of this after I had to drop off. But
I found
remember when we tried to create new folders on this page right here in the Jupyter Notebook, nothing was happening. So you said to go and do it on somewhere else, it would be the same thing because we weren't actually working in here. So I just created a Python folder on my computer, just using, like on my C drive, for instance.
Yep. That's all you need.
Okay.
So this is go ahead.
You're muted.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Don. I'm listening.
Okay. Well, this is my downloads directory. This is the file that I just downloaded, and it's a direct copy of one out there. Like I say, I keep my Python stuff on my OneDrive, Documents, Python. So I'm going to go there and pull that file up. But this is the default view. When I first come into Jupyter Notebook, this is the view. So I go down here to OneDrive, and I go down here to Documents, and this is the exact these files, these folders are no different than what you would see in Windows Explorer. They are the operating system, and it's just not as good an interface as your Windows Explorer. So go into Documents, go into Python, and then I keep these in my Notebooks directory. So here, 03, Decisions in Boolean Logic. This is the file that I uploaded to the classroom this morning. So it should be exactly what you're downloading. And you click on it, and you get a new tab that now is a Jupyter Notebook. The other one is the Jupyter Notebook Explorer view, I believe is what they call that. The other one, once you click on a notebook, you actually have a Jupyter Notebook, and you can have as many of these as you want open. You can go back to the Explorer here, and I can open up the one from last time, sequential statements and input output base, and they're both open, and they are independent environments. If I create a variable in this notebook 2, Python won't be able to see it over in notebook 3 because they're completely separate kernels of Python. So yeah, that's all they are. They're just an Explorer tab, or I mean a Chrome tab. So whenever you put away a notebook, you always say File, Close, and Halt. And that just puts away that one notebook. but it leaves everything else active. Okay, so I wanted to cover decisions and Boolean logic, which is just computer science speak for if then else. Okay, so making decisions. The way this works is called, Boolean logic, which is just something is either true or it is false, and that's the way these expressions work. They can be really complicated, or they can be very, very simple. Like if name equals Don, that true. And then the complexity comes in when you start to use these like you would in English, normal English language rational thought. Well, if this happens or that happens, and this and that happens, so you kind of got to start to think, or you play computer in your head when you're writing these if then else expressions. Boolean just means true or false, and relational operators determine if a relationship is true. Generally speaking, you're testing to see if something is greater than something else, something's less than something else, less than or equal to something else. One thing to note here is the double equal sign. So when you're assigning a value, when you're saying, name underscore variable equals quote Don unquote, you use a single equal sign. But when you're checking to see if name underscore variable equals Don, you use double equal sign. And I make that mistake all the time when I'm blazing through and I'm writing a program. I'll forget to do those double equal signs when it's a comparison operator. There you go. So that's those are some examples in this markdown cell right here. And then here, just like remember when you could type in the name of a variable and Python just, because it's interactive Python, the current generation of Python, IPython, it automatically prints out the value of that variable. You don't have to even say print. All you got to do is type in the name of the variable, and it throws the value of the variable out to the outputs to the screen. Well, these expressions will do the exact same thing. So if you click in this code cell, 1 less than or equal to 1, that looks like it wouldn't do anything in most programming languages. It would error. But in Python, I'm going to hit Control Enter and run that. It evaluates that expression and gives you the result. I don't know why or when you would ever really need this, unless you were just kind of testing. If you had a bunch of variables, you were writing a program and you had them all running and everything, and you wanted to kind of see the result of a complex comparison or something like that, you might type in an expression like this to see if it is true or false. But this shows you, 1 is less than or equal to 1. That resolves to true. So you would say, if 1 is less than or equal to 1, the stuff you do under the true leg would execute. 1 is less than 1. 1 is not less than 1. 1 is equal to 1. So that's why the next one will evaluate to be true. 1 is not less than 1. And then the not equals is bang equals, which some languages use less than, greater than right together, like a diamond shape. But Python uses exclamation point equal sign. So 1 is not equal to 1. Well, that's false because 1 is equal to 1. So that equates to false. So that those 4 cells just start to give you an idea of how statements are resolved to being either true or false. There's and nothing nothing in between. So yeah, they're not assigning a value, they're just testing. Okay. And remember, I got these from my buddy, college professor. So here are in English the kind of the types of conditional statements that you might run into. The first one, your mom asked you, "Would you like a sandwich?" That's yes or no. You do something or you do nothing. So you say yes to the sandwich, and she asked, "Would you like ham or turkey?" So now there's two. You know, if you want ham, something. If you want turkey, she puts turkey on it. So there's two choices, but you've already you've already made a choice. So there is no do nothing leg. You've no doing nothing is no longer an option. And then you've got multiple things to choose from, and that's the third bullet here. Dad says, welcome home from college. You're gonna mow the yard, pull the weeds, trim the dead branches, take your sister to the pool, because laying around watching TV is not one of the options. So these are English language descriptions of the kind of things that you would do in a program, and you have to program the logic to make the computer do what you want it to do. So in Python, this is the syntax to do two things. You have two execution paths. So you're programming along, and you want to do something based on a condition. So the basic format, the generic format, is if something, then Python will execute, and then the colon. That's really important right there at the end of that. That signifies, even if it's only going to be one statement after the colon, you need to have that colon there at the end. But if you want to do more than one thing, if you want to say, you know, if choice equals turkey sandwich, then, you know, I don't know, count the ham and count the cheese and whatever, you know, make sure you got mayonnaise. So you can do one or more statements if some condition is true. And that condition is, you know, checking if the user chose 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, you would say if user choice equals 2, then do this stuff. Otherwise, I don't care what else. And it doesn't matter what else. It'll do the stuff under the else block. So that's why we basically have two in a condition where you have two choices. If this condition is false, it will do the stuff under the else block. Okay. And you indent them, and then when you're all done, there is no termination character at the end of an if else block. But you put a blank line after it. So when you're working with this stuff, it's good to have. I never start from a clean slate in my head, or when I'm programming. I'm always looking at an example of something just to keep my head straight. So this is the basic format. The things to three main things to remember is the colon after the if condition and after the else. Smack a tab and indent, and Python will, or Notebook will automatically indent after your condition and your colon. It knows to do that for you. And then the third thing is to make sure you have a blank line after your else. And we'll get into some examples here. So, in fact, here's a code cell. Okay, so we are asking the user using the input statement to enter a gross income, and then we're converting that to integer format. And then here we're doing an if else block. If their income is less than 45,000, we're going to do this stuff. And without looking at anything else in the program, any other variable, no other note, if this is true, if income is less than 45,000, it will do these commands here. It will execute these lines. And if it is not, it will execute the stuff under the else. So if you run that, you can see the result of it. Run it, and so say I made negative $500. I haven't tried this. We'll see what happens. I am in the equal or under 45K branch, and I owe negative 80 in taxes. I get an $80 tax credit because I lost money this year. Any questions on how that operates? I'm going to run it again, and I'm going to type in exactly 45K equal to or under 45K, and then run it one more time and do 46,000. I'm in the income over 45,000, and it does the calculation based on a higher tax rate, because we set tax rate based on this if then else, this if else. So that's where that's the utility. If you need to do one thing based on the logic, you put all of that under your if, and if you need to do something else, put it over here. But generally speaking, they get a little more complicated than just pure if else. This is actually the basics. But you don't have to have an else leg, because sometimes you only want to do what the true condition, and so you do that by you just omit the else leg. You just don't put it there. And here's an example of that, where we're going to enter our by default. Beg your pardon. Hang on. So this one is particularly useful if you set the value prior to the conditional statement. So you set up what the default is, and then based on what happens later in the program, you can just do a true statement. You won't, and there is no else. There's nothing else I want to do. I just want to do this if they happen to enter a low income. So there's an example of doing that. So by default, you're in the high bracket. See how that works? Because I only made 30. There you go. And then there are times when you're writing a program that you want to do multiple things based on the logic, based on the if. And I say if then else, or a lot, and you'll hear that because that's the way I think basic logic theory works. But there are programming languages that actually put the word then after as a keyword, and if you don't say if A equals B, then it'll error. In Python, I guess that colon is the then for readability's sake. And in some programming languages, you'll see a multiple condition statement like this will be expressed as what's called a case statement, where where if this is the case, then do this stuff. Else, if this is the case, do this stuff. Else, if this is the case, do this stuff. But in Python syntax, it's an elif. So comparing apples to apples with other programming languages, if you've seen that, this is the equivalent of a case statement in Python. But here we say if this one is true, and then else is just the everything else, one other choice, and it doesn't matter. There's no logic in the else leg that we saw at its fundamental level. But sometimes you want to say if this, but hang on, if this is due, then do this other leg. Else if this is true, else if this is true. But they don't say else if in Python. They call it elif to rerun that. Sorry, double clicked on my markdown cell. Python uses the keyword elif, but it really stands for else if. So if this is true, do this stuff. Else, if this is true, do this stuff. Else, condition 3, and on down the line. So that's really the 3 basic cases of conditional statements. 1 choice, 2 choices, or lots of choices. Okay. So one thing about the if elif is once it's satisfied, it terminates. Once one of these legs in this, like this block here, once it's satisfied, it doesn't check any of the others, even if they might be true, which if you're writing your logic correctly, you can take advantage of that. And you'll have to practice with it. It makes it easier. It makes the statements easier because you don't have to put like a bracket. If final grade's greater than 90, else if it's between 80 and 90, you don't have to say that. Like here, if final grade's greater than 80, it's a B. Well, wait, now what if my grade was 90? What if it was 91? Well, you've already satisfied that up here if the final grade is greater than 90. It will never check 91 to see if it's greater than 80 because you wrote the if, elif, else logic in the correct order. I'm going to pick on somebody. Is that making sense? Regina, is that making sense?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Awesome. So there's an example of a multiple if, else, else for you to use. So like I said, I've assigned these Python programs, and I can tell folks are trying to do it from memory. Starting from scratch, trying to write this stuff from memory, and never ever have I ever written anything without looking at an example of any complexity at all. There's just too many mistakes to be made, too many different computer languages floating around in my head. So yeah, use these to make sure that you're not making a syntactical error. You notice the essentials here, right? We got a colon after the if and each elif and the else. They're indented. Setting the letter grade based on the numeric score is indented. And then you have a blank line after the entire conditional block. And then you print out the letter grade. So let's say, and of course we're using int, like we said, you see this all the time in Python. You just don't trust it. You put it in there. Let's say I made a int. I'm gonna say 101, which is impossible, but I got an A. So doesn't error check any of that. But I wanted to do real quick here. I wanted to see if I do an int. If I put in a floating point, value, does the int function, yep, invalid literal. So if I wanted to convert that, I'd have to do some error checking. And if I do anything else, what if I get a -20? That's new. That's an integer. You got an F. That's pretty bad if you get a -20. Just saying. Probably going to have to give that tuition assistance back. Okay, and then, so that's the rudiments of how these things work. That, final grade greater than or equal to 90 will be evaluated, and it will be either true or false. If it's true, we execute the line letter grade equals A. That, at its foundation, that's all there is to it. But it gets complicated when you start having multiple conditions on the same line, and then nested conditions within conditions. Like I didn't have a good example. I had to write this one myself. So it may not be the best because I did this yesterday. So you want to know a combination of things. You can do that on the same line, and we'll get to that in a minute. You can say if something is, you can say if LDL cholesterol is less than or equal to 120 and something else. You can use and or, and you can even use not. There's not logic out there. I'll get to that in a minute. But sometimes you want to nest things. You don't want to do it on the same line because there may be a more complicated set of logic if LDL cholesterol is greater than 120 versus the else leg, say. So I tried to give an example here of a nested if else block. So you can nest these basically without limit. Inside of an if, you can have another if else. And then inside the else block, you can have another if else. And inside of this nested if, you could have another nested if else, or if else, or whatever. And each one gets evaluated using Boolean logic. And no matter how complicated it is, no matter how many if this and that, or that and this and that or this, no matter how complicated, convoluted, the statement is it will either resolve to true or false and act appropriately, either do that leg or not do that leg of the if then elif. Okay. One easy use case for these little terminal applications is if you're writing a little program for someone to use, and you want to give them a menu, you can do it this way. It works pretty well. If they choose 1, we never even evaluate if they chose 2 or 3. We just do number 1. And same as if they entered number 2, we never check to see if it was French. We execute. If they choose 2, we print Spanish and move on. So for this one, like if I enter, say 4, it should say incorrect. So run it again. Control enter. Whoop. Control add 1. Yeah. Your entry was not correct. I made a note of this. Ah, there it is. I know I made a note of this. I knew I made a note of this. Somebody tell me I'm not crazy.
You're not crazy.
Thank you, Regina. I made a note of this because I typed in 1 and it said your entry was not correct. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It says 1 if it equals 1. But then I remembered. What data type does the input function return? Anyone? Anybody remember? We were working with the input statement last time. Well, let's find out. Print the type of, oh, here's another cool shortcut. I keep forgetting to tell you guys about. If I type in a few letters, a letter or two, and I hit tab, if you've used nice, long, meaningful names, sometimes it can be a big pain to type them in. But if I type in a few letters and I hit the tab key, it can bring up a autocomplete. It popped out menu choice because I hit tab. So let's do this again. So I typed in one and it said, and it went down to the L's. So let's see what happened here. One, it's a string. So one is not a string. One is the integer one. So bad on me. I should have done I should have either done an int of the input. Yeah, I should have either done that or either that would have worked, or realizing that input returns a string, I can put these in quotes. It's your choice as a programmer, whatever makes sense to you. Now, if I run that, I don't need to print the type. I know what that is. So I can get rid of that again, delete that, run it again. Now, if I type in one in English, so that data typing can get you like that. There's just any number of things that can get you like that. And then getting down towards the end here, we have and, or, and not. So you can, here we go. You can combine statements if this and that. Both have to be true, and then it will execute the next leg of the conditional statement. You can say if this or that, then and if either of those are true, either of them, then it will do the next leg, just like you would think. But here's a word of wisdom. And not logic. Sometimes you need it. I try not. I don't like that operator. I don't think like that. But I think there are cases where maybe as you advance in programming, you might want to use it. But I try not. It can be tough. It reverses just like you would think. It's like turning equal to not equal. It reverses the logic of your statement. To try to build expressions with the most critical criteria in the first position. I think that's so it executes less tests. It should execute faster if it especially if it's the most common, most expected case. Anyway, this first thing here is a repeat. I'm not sure why we're doing that. Oh, we got to enter the grade again. We already have that. We did that before, but for each time, yeah, I got you. For this cell here, we need to know the grade and your income, and then here's some. It's arbitrary, but it gives you an example of and logic and or logic. So if their income is less than 45,000 and they got an A, so high performing lower income person, bango, you get a big bonus. If income's less than 40,000 or final grade is greater than 80. So it would have already found the A students, right? So this leg, this ELIF, can say greater than 80. It doesn't need to say greater than 80 and less than 90 because we've already satisfied that in the leg above. So it would have executed that. You're getting a big bonus and moved on and gone to the next outside the block. So we're saying if income's less than 45,000, or final grade is greater than 80, you're getting a gift card. And then here's the not. ELIF not an A. So regardless of your income, if you didn't get an A, you say thanks for taking the class. And then this last one, I don't know that there's any way to get here, because if you're high income and you get a B, it's going to say thanks for taking our class. Because if you're lower income, it's and not that 45K is good money. If your income's lower than 45,000, it's going to have already done one or the two of these. So the only people that will be checked here are people that make more than 45,000. And if they didn't get an A, it says thanks for taking the class. So these if ELIF blocks, like I said, the order matters in the logic. And sometimes you can be very explicit, more explicit than you need to be, if that makes it more readable and understandable and it works. That's okay. But I just want to make sure you guys understand that once an if or the ELIF is satisfied, it does the stuff underneath that and then never doesn't check any of the other conditions. Hopefully I'm not kicking it. I struggle with that. I don't know if I'm kicking a dead horse and all 9 of you are saying, I got it, move on, Walker. Or if it helps to hear it a few different times. I apologize. Let's see. So we'll run that. Let's run this one. So like I said, I made a final numeric grade. Let's say I made a B, so 82. And gross income's 50K. This should say thanks for taking the class, right? Nope, you're getting a gift card. What did I do wrong here? Oh, I got better than a B. There you go. Or greater than. So what I needed to do was not get a B and make more than our threshold income. So I want to say 79 and 50,000. Thanks for taking our class. There you go. So either one of these are true, you're getting a gift card. There you go. Okay, and then there is a data type that is Boolean. And you use the keyword with a capital letter, false, and the keyword true to set that, just like you would set a numeric literal. That's a Boolean literal. And if you put it in quotes, it's going to think, oh, that's a string. It doesn't care that the word false is inside of quotes. So make sure you don't use it. If you use these, I don't use Booleans a whole lot in the stuff I do, and I don't remember doing it a whole lot in a Boolean variable, but absolutely useful. Sometimes you get data, particularly in data analysis, you get a 0 or a 1. A categorical variable is true or not. Your control group or placebo group or whatever, it'll say 0 or 1 got cancer, is 1, 0 is didn't get cancer, whatever the case may be. So definitely a useful data type. But the main takeaway here let me run this. If I got a passed class, yay, you passed. So that was our input statement first. And then we printed passed class, which by default we have set to false. So before we do any if then else logic, our default going in proposition is that passed class is false. So that's what this false print is right here. And then if the grade's better than 59, then passed class equals true. So here we go. We set it to true. And then notice here, we don't have to say if passed class equals true. We don't have to do that. But I'm gonna see, now that I think about it, if it works. Boom. Oh, what did I do wrong? Anybody? What did I do wrong? Extra credit. We'll take the whole day off tomorrow. Whoever comes off the microphone tells me what I did wrong just then.
Only one equal sign.
Ah, oh, there you go, buddy. You don't have any class tomorrow. You may take the entire day off of data analysis apprenticeship training. Equals true, but you don't have to do that. Let's see, 60. It's the same thing, but you don't have to do it. So that's why when you're naming a Boolean variable or a Boolean boolable, you should always name it such that it makes sense if it's true or if it's true. So if passed class, if you pass the class, is already named such that it makes logical sense. And syntactically, Python does not require you to say whether equals true or equals false. There you go. Some more programming examples. Run these, and the same thing. Once it does one of these, like if we say percentage of cloud coverage 29, it's going to set descriptor to clear, and it's not even going to waste compute cycles looking at the other ones. So that's why you don't need the brackets is what we're talking about there. You don't need to say if it's less than 30, less than or equal to 30, and less than or equal to 69. You don't need to say that because of the way if elif works, and the fact that you have put them in the correct order, put them in the logical order, so that you can have more brief expressions. Okay, so that's another one. And then here's another good if elif else. Same thing. I'm trying to think of this. Even if you put in a negative, and you can out of range. There we go. That's our else. Under 100. Same deal. The order of the if elifs makes it such that you don't ever need to specify a range of values. What's like 101? That should be basement, right? There you go. So that's the kind of conditional statements, and they get more complicated than that, but only from a problem solving and construction. The syntax doesn't get really any more complicated than that. At least it won't for this class. So here's a flow chart for if you want to dig into this. Here's a flow chart that you could code up as a programming example. Any questions before I show you the exercise and we break for the day so you can work on some Python hands-on. If you ever have questions, everybody's got my cell phone, right? From an email from me. You're welcome to text me. I can call you back, or give me a buzz, and we can go over something over the phone. Okay. So yeah, I would keep this notebook open while you are doing. And let me see, did I close out the classroom? I closed out the classroom. There's a there is a file I would like for you to download in the Python module called Python Exercises -1. If you download that and put it in your notebooks, it looks like, I think I want to go over, my dog is going crazy. It looks like this, Python Exercises 1. So I got markdown cells with an appropriate code cell. But I didn't provide the code. Oh, I forgot to clear that output. I didn't provide the code. So these are 5. The first 4 are I'm sorry, the first 3 are just output, input and output, nothing fancy. And then there's a couple of slightly brain teasers here on 4 and 5. This just to make sure everything's running, you're good to go. But if you have trouble with any of these, shoot me a note and we could talk it over. Remember, for the even or odd, you're going to want to remember the modulo operator. If something mod 2 is 0, if something is 2 mod the number. Hunter, help me out. How do you check for even and odd using the mod operator?
If something's congruent to 0, mod 2, it's even. If it's congruent to 1, mod 2, it's odd.
So like if I put a number in to the user and I entered 20 mod 2 is 0, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so your input number mod 2 equaling 0 means there's no output, means there's no remainder. So that's the math behind that number 5 there. I didn't want to get anybody frustrated, particularly somebody like me. I'm like, mod. I remember when I learned what the mod operator was, I was fully adult. I never heard of it in high school. Okay, so those are those 5. If you would, oh golly, did I even do that? You'll see an assignment here in about 5 minutes. I don't think I did it. I did not. I'll create an assignment called the same thing, Python Problems 1. If you could get those, you got an hour. So I would, advise you, after having worked with your employers, and they've said that this next hour is on the clock. I'd do it now, but it's up to you. But if you would knock out those 5 problems, and remember when you do a change to a notebook, you click on the floppy disk and it creates a checkpoint. You want to make sure you do that because it may not have been the default 120 seconds since you did the change. So let's see, I'll do cell all output clear because I've got output from the last time I goofed around with this. All output clear. And then remember to you click the floppy disk to create a checkpoint, a saving the version, and then you say file, close, and halt. then that notebook is safely put away. So I'll create that assignment here as soon as I go off camera. If you could get that knocked out before we meet again on Tuesday, that would be good. And we'll cover chart types, what graph is used for what kind of data, and how to get them started in Excel at least. And hopefully I'll be able to show you a couple of new things. I think most folks have recognized, have worked with, pie charts and bar charts and line charts and whatnot. So hopefully I'll be able to show you a thing or two that's new next week. But then I do want to at least start talking about an exercise with Excel that I'd like to do after the workshop. So here in a couple weeks. Okay. Any questions or concerns while you got me on camera? Going once, going twice.
Not that I know of.
Okay. All right, guys. I'll see you again, and let me know if you need help with these 5 Python example problems. See you Tuesday.
Great. Thank you.